So I'll start this video out with a videography tip if you're going to be using your phones. Today, Misty took my camera to go film a magic show with my niece and nephew in it. So she's gone, and while I'm sleeping, this show will go on, and I'll get to see it later. So now I don't have anything to record with, right? I've got plenty of different things to record with. But I've chosen my phone today, and I was going to suction cup this down to the desk and then connect this part to that part and then put my phone in it. But you know what? The OtterBox around my phone that protects it is really hard to get off and get back on again. So instead, you all are watching me from my phone, which is propped up in a business card holder like this one, right? And then that's on top of a tissue box. So, pro tip, business card holder, tissue box, boom, you got your phone stand. Anyways, I'm responding to somebody who also makes phone videos with a phone. I've got other cameras I could have used. I don't like the fisheye on this GoPro. It shows you too much of what's on the side of my room. The shit that I haven't finished yet in the room. So, no GoPro for you. Yeah, I'm all sorts of unprepared for this. Like last night, I had no scratch paper where I was when I listened to the video that I'm responding to, and I wanted to take down some notes. So I found a way to write them down on the back of some label paper that I was using these labels. So you can only write on one side. If you try to write on the other side, your pen just slips all over because that's where the stickiness of the stickers was. So my notes were a little bit short too. Excuses, right? So the Anti-Bryte made a video response to my video about Secular Talk 2008 versus Secular Talk 2016. And rather than see my video as me showing Secular Talk's two sets of views that contradict each other in a way that I felt might be hypocritical, the Anti-Bryte, because I have this history on YouTube of political discussion and my own leanings, he thought that I should have to defend the views that Secular Talk had in 2008 or in 2016 as if they are my own, but I don't feel like I had to defend any viewpoint when it was actually him who was using those arguments, not me. I wasn't the one who was using the mathematically eliminated argument in that video. I was saying that Secular Talk had used it. Now, I have used that argument before, especially when somebody is declared the winner by virtue of having actually won enough votes to win the nomination, and we're just waiting on the DNC or RNC, and this is spanning decades of me watching politics. I've made this mathematically eliminated argument before with Ron Paul, with Hillary Clinton, and with Bernie Sanders, right? So I have used it, but I don't feel like I had to defend it if you're responding to that video, because I'm not the one using the argument in that video. Secular Talk was back in 2008. I was just pointing out how he had used it against Hillary, and then when Hillary supporters were using it against Bernie, he had defended Bernie against the very same argument. Andy video is linked in the description box. Please, he is one of my favorite detractors. He's very passionate about what he says, and if you like drama, he's bringing the drama with some insults too. It's awesome, like a little pirouette at the end, little cherry on top insults. But he's got some context and some substance to it that I'm going to respond to. So he said, one of the reasons why the mathematically eliminated argument should not be used is against Bernie was that Bernie's campaign should not have been stopped because it was symbolic. He was showing that he was not going to back down, is the way that Andy Bryte put it. And I just want to point out that while Bernie Sanders was campaigning, he actively spoke against that argument and said that he still had a chance to win, and they were going to take it all the way to the DNC. Okay? So, aside from Bernie himself disavowing himself of that as a refuge for the mathematically eliminated argument, Bernie Sanders backed down. Okay? And let me tell you how he did it. After not winning the nomination from the Democratic Party, he went back to having an I at the end of his name instead of a D. He's no longer affiliated Democrat. Yeah, he'll caucus with them, and yeah, he'll work with them because they're closer to his politics than, say, the Republican Party. But after he couldn't win within that party, he went back to what he did for his entire career before that. He put an I at the end of his name. He's not showing that he's not backing down. After he couldn't win, he's like, well, fuck it. If I can't win the nomination of the Democratic Party, I'm going to go back to having an I. Right? I'm going to take my ball and go home. So, Andy also says, you find party allegiance... Andy said he finds party allegiance to be unscrupulous as a metric for determining who should be your candidate. So, what Andy would have wanted is that the larger group of people who voted for Hillary Clinton to see the slightly smaller group of people who wanted Bernie Sanders to win and voted for him and say, we've been backing this candidate for decades now, and we've built this infrastructure of support for her, but hey, there's this newcomer who has a slightly smaller group of people supporting him. Let's jump ship and change horses in midstream and go for this guy, who's been degrading our party for all of his career and wearing an I instead of a D because he has problems with our club of people who builds careers and tries to keep people in office and elected that wear a D. We should just support this guy who's been independent all his career. Yeah, that's what Andy would have wanted them to do. Is go ahead and support him because a smaller group of people liked him. And he said that Ted Cruz conceding didn't help Trump much. And I'm going to agree that it didn't help him that much at the moment that Ted Cruz conceded. But the fact that Trump's biggest rival within his own party was Ted Cruz was helping him from the get-go because there was no real competition against Trump. As soon as he really gained steam in that primary, there was no one. He had a far bigger lead against everyone else in the Republican Party than Hillary had. against Berning. And in general, the party that finishes their primary process earlier and whittles it down to one candidate earlier is going to have an edge. Now, that edge might not be enough for them to win. I mean, if you go back to John McCain shoring up the nomination of the Republican Party against Barack Obama, he didn't win, even though Hillary stayed in longer than John McCain securing the nomination. So it's not a sure thing, but it's just fucking common sense that the group that's infighting longer while the other group doesn't have to be infighting, that group has an edge. Sorry, has less of an edge. Whatever. This is an unedited ramble on a phone, so I'm not going to edit that part. Let's see. Next, I want to talk about Andy Bryte says that Hillary Clinton is not in favor of universal health care, even though she was the one that introduced it in '93, and now she's not in favor of it. And what I'm going to say to that is, it harkens back to her saying that you need to have a public and private message, and you have to basically play politics. And I don't think that it's fair to say that somebody who's in favor of incrementalism versus an abrupt change to the way that we live in America is somebody who's not in favor of universal health care. I think that's the same with a lot of different issues that I think in the end the goal is the same between most Democrats, Hillary included. And I think that's what she meant by build on Obamacare. Andy Bryte said, what does that even mean? Universal health care being the way of life for most developed countries, and really this inevitable thing that all countries are going to have to come to, is something that is unavoidable. You know, it's just a matter of how do we get there. And if you were to just do a thought experiment yourself about what would happen if tomorrow we just snapped our magic fingers and universal health care was implemented across the board in America, what would happen if that was so abrupt that it just happened fucking tomorrow? Well, a whole bunch of people that didn't have health care insurance before would start flooding certain hospitals, especially in urban areas, to the point where they would be overtaxed because the infrastructure itself of the healthcare system does not support universal health care the way that it is. And it gets farther away from that every day as hospitals are building in a way that they're not counting on universal health care being the model. And you would see a whole bunch of people scrambling to get away from the healthcare profession if their pay was being cut because universal health care, in order to work, has to rebudget and reallocate funds and basically reclassify workers as being of a different caste. Because if you're going to have healthcare workers being paid at the rate that they're at, you're going to have a problem if you're going to try to fund universal health care as is. Yeah, you're going to have scores of insurance company workers, tens of thousands of them in many different districts, all of a sudden finding themselves without a job. And then what are they to do except for vote in politicians that would immediately repeal that change to universal health care, which wouldn't be very productive. And you can see that with Trump trying to repeal Obamacare just for the reason that it has Obama's stamp all over it. It has the other party's triumph written all over it, and that can't be, you know. People are like Pepsi and Coke that way, and he's just trying to erase legacy. There's really no other reason for it. I mean, Obamacare basically is Romney Care, and it was the Republican way of slowing down the inevitable change to universal health care. So, I don't feel like Hillary Clinton was against universal health care. Again, I feel like it's a matter of how soon do we get it, and what problems are we going to have with each stage of it. If we had universal health care tomorrow, snap your fingers magically, we would have to readjust our tax code, right? And there are many people who want benefits like universal health care, but when it comes to paying for them and seeing that, oh, they're going to have to pay a little bit more, or they're going to have to do without some other thing that's important to them, they're going to fight back on that. You know, working out the budget for it is going to take some time, right? I feel like Obamacare was an incremental step towards it that was... It was a speed bump that was originally thought up by Republicans who knew that this was a losing battle. And what's ironic about this is those people who want universal health care the most are of the far left, most progressive people, and the person who's going to help them out the most in this is Donald Trump, by repealing and replacing Obamacare with something that will actually get probably closer to universal health care. You know, every step that we take is just going to get incrementally closer, okay? And when the political pendulum swings the other way, and the Democrats have both the presidency and Congress next, they're going to institute all the changes that were repealed from them before, and they're going to have all of the incremental steps that the Republicans made towards that universal health care as well. You know, and why do I think that universal health care is an inevitability? And I only differ in that we need to head that way, in the idea that I think we should be more incremental about it and make sure that we're not hurting other industries. But I feel like it's inevitable because half the country is not going to have a job in the next generation. Okay? Jobs in and of themselves are going to be seen in a different light. Technology is going to push most of the manufacturing jobs out from the ability of people to even have a job. We're going to have home 3D printers that will print every product that you would want, much the same way that you pay for your premium cable channels, you know, or pay-per-view on TV. We're going to have people basically buying products that never need a human being touching them at any step of the way. And from my perspective as more of a futurist, we need to head towards universal health care, and we need to head towards, say, a basic allowance, and a whole bunch of other things that right now seem like the left progressive wet dream, but more because technology is going to make us obsolete. And these are going to be necessities that even the conservatives will come to agree to, that there just won't be jobs. for everyone. And just about everything you can think of that can be done could be done by a robot or a program, or a piece of machinery, or home 3D printing. It's going to get to that point. Look at where we were 50 years ago and look at where we are now. I'm producing this whole show from my fucking room here, and the technology that I have is probably better than a lot of TV shows from the 50s. I think the Hubble telescope has computers on it that are less powerful than the phone that's recording this. And if this camera had a bigger lens, I think it would actually take better pictures. So we should launch a droid phone into space. That's what I'm saying. The next thing I wanted to talk about was Andy saying that I work in the drug addiction field as a counselor, and I'm not a politician regularly, so why am I talking about politics? Then he apologized and said that was a low blow. Two things about that. First, I'll give you a little rundown about my political resume. Twice I've been a delegate for a political party where I was the state, judicial, congressional, and county delegate. I went to all those assemblies, recorded them, and put them on YouTube. I was a polling place coordinator, where I basically ran a little precinct's election place on election day. I have been a voter registration drive organizer, registered with the Secretary of State, and I registered many high school age kids to vote in a primarily conservative district in order to get more young voters because they're more likely to be Democrat. I was embedded in many different activist movements. I have many different videos of me filming political activism and being a part of it, and I get invited to so many different things behind the scenes with these activists, and that's just part of my political resume, and I just will put this out there. What did you do, Andy, to give you your education on politics? Did you take a class? Did you read a book? Did you listen to a lecture? Did you watch a YouTube video? Because I was there. I was in the thick of it, actually doing shit, And aside from that, I feel like people having jobs outside of just being politicians is a good thing in politics. Okay? It's a good thing for people who aren't career politicians or aren't political science majors to comment on what's happening in the sphere of politics, because their perspectives can be very enlightening to those people who are living in that bubble. Okay? And I'm very happy that most of the delegates that I have met along the way, that at that level, most of them aren't politicians. The ones that do get delegate spots that are politicians, I feel like they're robbing their prospective parties of the richness of a diverse perspective, especially the working class perspective. And to that end, I'd just like to say that I do have plans to get back into politics again and be a delegate again. And for reasons that probably weren't arrived at with the same path, I am still probably going to vote the same way as Kyle Kulinski, Secular Talk, And I will probably be voting for candidates that would be Justice Democrats were it not for them maybe accepting some money that was not from an individual person. They might have accepted the money of a business that they vetted, and they don't feel that they have a problem with it. And that's probably because they and I are pragmatists. You'll see when I use the air quotes around the word corporate Democrat that Kyle Kalinske throws out there, that term that he throws out there. I use that because how many Justice Democrats are in office right now? When you say corporate Democrat, you're basically saying Democrat. When you say corporate politician, you're basically saying politician. Less than 1% of them are not taking corporate funds. It's not just the ones that he's eyeballing for, particular primaries that he thinks that he has candidates that are pure that can run against those people. No. That definition that he has that, if you take corporate money, you're a corporatist, that fits damn near all the people in politics. So that's why I put air quotes around it. Okay? But I actually envision that if I were looking for somebody to run a slate, if you don't know what that is, it's a list of people that are trying to be delegates for the National Convention, and we should all vote for those people as delegates to winnow it down to the delegates that get sent on to the National Convention. If I wanted to trust someone to promote a slate so that it couldn't be finagled away by corporatists, which is something that I saw in the assemblies that I went to as a delegate. I saw all sorts of dirty tricks where people were voting for delegates to go on to the National Convention who were not going to be voting for the people that they thought they were. These lists of people were spoofed, and I caught that on video, and I put these videos out on YouTube. I saw confusing lists put out by different organizations. I saw that politicians who just wanted a vacation to go to the RNC were basically buying off their old friends that were also delegates just to put them on slates, even though they were just career establishment, and they weren't going to vote any other way. But they said a few things in one meeting, and they'd say a few things in another meeting and have basically have their name on every fucking slate. You're like, well, gee, are you a Ron Paul delegate, or a Mitt Romney delegate, or a Rick Santorum delegate? What the fuck are you? So, yeah, if I were to trust somebody with a national presence to keep a slate pure enough so that nobody could finagle with it and try to confuse others, I would ask Kyle Kalinske to put it up on his Justice Democrats website. Hey, I plan in 2020 to probably be backing Elizabeth Warren, right? And so I would trust the list of people who have pledged to Elizabeth Warren and are trusted to be posted on the Justice Democrats website, and not some other website where they can change a couple of the names at the last minute just to confuse people so that the other candidate wins. You know what I'm saying? And this is for the caucus system that we have in Colorado that might be changing soon. But, yeah, I feel like in the end, the end goal that we have is the same. And the end goal of a lot of politicians on the left is the same. But a lot of times it's a matter of how pragmatic those people are and how incrementalist they are that really causes this horrible infighting. And I guess I'll close this 30-minute now ramble with, I guess, the ad hominem attack that will keep this drama going, right? Because you've listened to some pretty boring shits until then in this 30-minute video. So, I guess, like, I thought about this all night, and the best I could come up with was, Andy, you fucking hippie, you need to get a fucking haircut because you look like Honey Boo Boo grew up and tried to transition and can't grow a fucking beard. Everybody go subscribe to Andy Bryte. Link in the description box.